Hey, it's Angie, and welcome back to Midlife Magic and Mayhem. You can't be what you can't see. That quote is at the core of the mission of Liberty Road and what drives founder Neda Jones to share stories of female artists, founders, innovators, and creatives so you are able to see what's possible for your future. Since 2000, Neda has worked alongside female founders, from starting an online co-op of emerging designers and co-authoring an Amazon small business bestseller to creating conferences, workshops, and consulting women-owned businesses. She has made it her business to empower women. 20 years of listening and serving has given Neda a unique insight into what women are looking for to thrive. Today, she is focused on inspiring and equipping women in the middle third of life, which of course is very near and dear to my heart. Armed with curiosity, experience, and empathy, Neda hosts the Liberty Road podcast and is expanding the Liberty Road media platform to include live and digital programming and digital content. This is a delightful conversation about shifting, pivoting, and just doing the thing, whether it be writing that book, starting a business, asking for a promotion, taking that painting class, or whatever it is that's burning inside of you to do in the world. You can do it. Take small steps. Neda's generosity of spirit, time, and talent is openly obvious as we glide our way through this conversation. And definitely go follow Liberty Road on Instagram. I laugh out loud at some of her posts. They are so spot on. It's amazing. And check out her podcast, Liberty Road, as well. Big stuff coming down Liberty Road. Don't miss it. Good morning, Neda. How are you today?
I'm well, Angie. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Where are you right now? Where in the world are you, and what are
Where
you
am
looking at?
I? I'm looking at a really gloomy day here in Los Angeles, very specifically in Pasadena, California. We've had, I don't know what's going on with California, Southern California in particular. We're drenched in water and we've been gloomy lately. So it's a nice change, I guess. It's some weather.
I get it. I get it. We are here in Boulder, Colorado, and it's been a little cloudy and gloomy for here too. When we moved here, I'm like, wait a minute, I thought we had 360 days of sun. That's
Yeah. It's true,
so
but in Colorado, being from Colorado, you just have to hang on an hour. Like, right? Just hang on an hour. It'll change.
totally. I mean, we have noticed we're up in the mountains now and it's sunny, and then in 10 minutes it'll be really cloudy and it looks like it's going to storm. And then 10 minutes later, the sun's back out. So
That's
it
just
is pretty
summer.
nice.
That's just kind of late spring, summer there. And then
Yeah,
you'll get the sun all year round, even when it snows. That's
I
awesome.
know. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. Well, tell us a bit about you and your story. You have a podcast called Liberty Road and a website that I'm pretty obsessed with, and an Instagram account that I am definitely obsessed with. So
Oh, that's so sweet.
so tell us a bit about what got you here.
Okay, so I'll try and give you. I think it's always helpful for the listener to sort of know the backstory because I think we can kind of start in the middle, and that feels a little unfair, especially when a listener is trying to figure out kind of what they're doing and what's next for them. So I studied in college. My degree was in marketing, and my dream was I was in New York City, and my dream was to work for Donna, Ralph, or Calvin, one of them, and to be their right hand, like kind of business marketing person. That was really what drove me. Was I wanted to be in the fashion industry. I really am not creative at all, so I couldn't design. So this was like the next best thing. This was the high school me who was dreaming up the future. So studied that in college. Spent a little bit of time in that world, and then really quickly, probably a year out, moved into public relations and actually moved to Boulder, Colorado. and worked for an agency. I don't know if they're still there, called Carl Thompson Associates, and was doing, I mean, we had the Coors racing team. There was a small team called the Colorado Rockies that was starting. That just dated me right there.
Oh, I love it.
Um, so we had some really interesting clients. It was a great. It was great to expand my sort of communications, I think, background to really get into public relations. And then decided after about 18 months that I wanted to move back east, this time to Washington, D.C., for a variety of reasons. Um, Mainly around some work I was doing, nonprofit work I was doing, where I'm Egyptian, my family's from Egypt, and we're Christian, and I wanted to do some work on on religious reconciliation among Jews, Muslims, and Christians in the Middle East. So I had been involved kind of very loosely, and was interested. The 20 some year old me was going to save the world doing that kind of work. Moved to DC, got a job in marketing, stayed there, grew with that company. It was called JAMS, Judicial Arbitration and Mediation Services, and I became the director of marketing there. So really spent a good chunk of my sort of corporate growth in that capacity, all the while kind of dreaming up, like, I think I want to work for myself. I think that I'm underutilized, and the person that I think I can be and want to be is not being realized in this sort of structure. It was great training. I have 3 kids. I recommend for my kids that they go work for somebody else before they work for themselves. But I kind of knew there was something else. And I thought, my work in DC sort of started to lead me to, oh, I think I want to work with people in developing countries and maybe women in developing countries. Like that side work that I was doing, that interest kind of started to open up another world for me. Fast forward, I remember I had an opportunity. I was back in New York, and it was a women's conference, and I had an opportunity to share with them, to kind of giving a speech and to talk about, kind of casting a vision for the future. And I said, I thought my future was working in developing countries with women. And here I am in New York City talking to a group of women. Like, maybe I got half of the vision right, and I say that to say, I think it's important that we cast a vision, that we have something that we're working toward, but also to roll with the punches and to be somewhat elastic and nimble as we move forward, because I couldn't have imagined that being a meaningful part of the work I wanted to do. But when I got there and I found how much meaning it gave me and how much impact I could have in that space, that became my space. And just for the record, I did get to go to Africa and work with some women. So that was very cool too, but it was in the context of working for myself. So I started a business in New York with my college roommate. It was called Ned and Shell. It was in 1999 when there was this newfangled thing that we weren't sure was going to work, called the WWW, on the World Wide Web. And although it had already had some really early success, people weren't sure if you could sell product on it. There was a man named Jeff who sold some books on something called Amazon. And so we were like, if Jeff can do it, maybe we can do it. So we set up, it was called Ned and Shell, Neda and Michelle. Sounds like, I always say, it sounds like a Jewish, old Jewish men's bagel shop, Ned and Shell, but it wasn't. It was Michelle and I, 2 women in their late 20s. And the concept was, we knew so many women, given the fact that we had both been in the fashion industry, had gone to school in New York. We knew so many women who were creative and talented and had launched a product of some kind. It could be a fashion line, a beauty line, a housewares line, but they didn't have the marketing sort of business acumen that Michelle and I had gone out and gotten in our corporate roles. And so we said, hey, what if we set up a website that's essentially real estate for these women? They could each be featured. We could sell. We would do all the drop shipping for them, and we could be buying on consignment, so we don't have to hold inventory. So the interface would remind you of Etsy. It had that a very similar sort of, everybody has their page and is doing their own thing, but we actually did the shipping. So it was kind of branded as Ned and Shell. We did that for 9 years. There was a component of the business that was wholesale. we would have about 40 women on the website at a time. And we started to realize, 8 to 10 of these are really strong and they have the manufacturing capacity to scale. So let's take them to market. And so we built that into our business. And so we had the wholesale business, the retail business, and we were starting to have babies. And I moved from New York back out west, and this time to Los Angeles, and this time with a husband. And I was pregnant. And the idea there was, okay, let's run everything digitally. Things are selling online. People have caught on to this, and which is why we had that longevity. And let's do, as many trade shows as we can. Well, then I had another and another. She had another, and I think it just didn't become the business we wanted, given our life and given how we wanted to be available in our life. I think those are very personal decisions for women to make, but that's where we landed. But we'd had 9 years of success and we wanted to tie it up in a pretty bow. Our relationship was fully intact. We were still great friends. I'm the godmother of one of her children. And so we didn't have this, there was no breakup story. So we approached McGraw Hill with sort of a how to book for female founders. This very early kind of 1 to 2 year launch. Like, how do you do that? What are the tools and resources that people have? And the book is so old now, it's hilarious to look back because it talks about there's this thing called social media, like it things change so quickly. But what the book gave us was a platform to launch whatever was next. Now, Michelle decided she wanted to go in the direction of graphic design. So she's like, you can have it. You can have the business, meaning the database we built, the subscriber base we built. You can run with this. I don't really want to do the speaking. I don't really want to do as much that sort of thing. Go with it. So, when you have a book, you sort of have this very limited time where you can capitalize on it. You do the book tour to sell books, but then you have to be like, okay, well, what's next? Otherwise, that was it. I was a one-time author, and now there's nothing else. So I decided to launch a conference here in Los Angeles for female founders. Just to give you context, I think this was 2010. And the idea was, what if I brought together brands and resources and inspirational speakers to speak to a group of women who are kind of considering what's next, wondering how they could launch something, and really just need the connections to do so. It's who you know. It in a lot of ways, it is who you know. And so we brought together banks, we brought together technology, we brought together graphic designers, all these resources. We literally, as you'd come into the conference space, we had something called the Resource Lounge. Wells Fargo was signing up people to open small business accounts. HP had these kiosks where they were training people to print off of their telephone. Again, 2010. Who else was there? Nestle was serving coffee. We had all these people who wanted to talk to this female founder, who wanted to connect with her, and also who wanted to just talk to women, because we buy a lot of things, right? So they wanted as a brand to interface with her. So I did that, smashing success, sold out. It was 500 women came to the conference, and that was in large part because we had some strong sponsors who helped me support and promote the event. Did it for a second year. Third year, we had a health crisis in my family. My husband was diagnosed with a neuromuscular disorder, and his brother had died the day after my conference, 2 days after my conference. And all of that was a big pause in our life. And our response to it was to take our 3 young children at the time out of school, and to take a year traveling as a family. My husband had to work because we had to fund this whole thing. And
Definitely.
so he would kind of fly to wherever we were on a Thursday and then fly out on a Monday night. So we stayed in the United States. We went to 38 states. I taught, I am not a homeschooler. God bless all the homeschoolers, not a homeschooler. Taught math in a museum by go count how many statues you see and divide it by, that sort of thing. And all of their English and writing was based on whatever they saw that day, and a lot of journaling and things like that. When they came back, they tested into the next grade level. So I didn't totally ruin my children's lives. It worked. And because we knew my husband was losing mobility, that was our response. Well, in that process, I was able to have a few people who, as a result of the conference and the book, said, "Hey, is there any way we could meet? Could you sort of coach me or consult? I'd love that." And I realized that having the autonomy to own my time, to do what our family needed to do, but to also make myself available to coach and to consult with what I knew. I had no certificate for coaching. I had none of that, but people saw what I did, read the book, saw the conference, and was like, well, she knows a little bit more than I do, so I guess I'll call her. And that led to being an accidental consultant. And so for 10 years, that's what I did. I consulted. We came back and we tried to do the conference online and sold out. It was a great success, great content. I didn't love it. I didn't love it. It was a different experience, and it didn't bring the same. It didn't coalesce in the same way. So I was like, you know what? This isn't what I want to do. Let me lean more into the consulting. Plus, I can control my own time when the kids are younger. So I did that. And now that brings us to now. So I have a sophomore in college, a senior who's graduating in a few weeks, and a rising sophomore in high school. And what I started to realize in my own life, and by the way, I had launched the podcast as a side hustle to my my consulting. And it was, I'm meeting all these really cool women. I'm having these cool conversations. Let me record them so that I can give an audience access to these cool stories. And it also built up my word of mouth consulting business. Fast forward to what I just said, my kids are growing up. And I start to realize as I go into these spaces for female founders, for entrepreneurial women, whether I'm on a panel or whether I'm in the audience, and I'm the oldest woman there. And I'm thinking, why am I the oldest woman here when this is actually, I have the most time that I've ever had in my life. I am the most freed up to actually pursue what I want to pursue. And I know myself in the most meaningful way. I know the impact I want to have. I know how I want to show up in the world. Something's not right here. We need to start elevating stories of women 40 plus and who are doing really cool things, whether that's a for-profit entrepreneurial endeavor, a nonprofit, they're, starting a podcast, they're becoming an influencer on social media, they wrote a book, they produced a documentary, whatever it is, someone with an entrepreneurial spirit. How do we start to tell more of those stories? Because we're living longer. There's more time for us to do what we want to do. And yet the examples of these entrepreneurial examples seem to be in their 20s and 30s. So then COVID hit. And I thought, okay, this isn't a time for me to pivot. This is a time for me to stay present with my clients and former clients who were calling, kind of, what am I going to do? The world is upside down, and the world was upside down. So I said, okay, I'm going to postpone that next move for a little bit longer. And then last February, decided this was the time. I changed the podcast from Liberty for Her to Liberty Road. And we changed our narrative to telling stories of women 40 plus only. And now what we're doing, and I retired from consulting, and now I'm building my own business. So it's starting with the podcast, but by the end of this year, we're going to be so much more.
Thank you for telling the whole story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or as much of the whole story. I mean, not birth forward, but
yeah,
it really,
it's not that exciting.
I get it. And for those of us over 40, that takes, might take a minute.
Takes too long.
Right. It's all good. But seriously, thank you for sharing all that. It is truly fascinating. And I'm sitting here like selfishly thinking, wow, I wish she wasn't retired from consultancy because I want to hire you for my own business. or go to a conference or something.
Yeah, come to a
But
conference. We'll be having some. I
I,
promise you. Yeah,
I was wondering about that. I'm like, I feel a conference coming on,
yeah,
possibly
yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
And I agree. Like as beautiful and wonderful as the online spaces and digital communities are, there is nothing like being in person.
yeah,
I
yeah. And
love
I
what
think
we're
there's a
doing. I love what you're doing online and all that,
yeah.
but you cannot substitute person to
Mm-mm,
person, human to human energy in
no.
person.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's a place for them to exist, to coexist. But I think we
Yeah.
have to really, it's funny. I've been doing, because I am thinking about a conference. And so I've been doing a little bit of research of kind of post COVID. How easy or hard has that been? What's the pent up demand for people going back? And what I'm hearing consistently is it's a hybrid. People are looking for a hybrid. There are people that are polarized in this area. They really want to go back, and other people are like, I never need to go back. I'm so cozy in front of my computer. And we saw this with students. My kids didn't necessarily, they got through it, but they weren't thriving in during online kind of learning during lockdown. They they liked not having to get up early in the morning. They liked rolling out in their pajamas, but they really wanted that social aspect. But I have other friends who their kids, they were like, this is the sweet spot. This is what I've been missing. So I think it's the same in that conference space, and it's the same for finding a hybrid of both virtual and online. I also think that we have to be careful. We have taught ourselves in the online space how to be online in a more uh, impactful or a more meaningful way. So by that I mean, if you have a conference, if you had a conference back in the day, 5 years ago, all you had to do is turn the camera on and you could sell a virtual ticket, a digital ticket. Now you have to create something very specifically for the virtual audience. It's not enough for them to be like the stepchild in the room. They really need things that are geared toward them. And so what that could mean is you record your actual experience, your live experience, and then you edit it in a way that's meaningful for the online community. For example, if you say, how many people here in the audience, love jelly beans? Okay, all the people that love jelly beans move to the corner of the room. We have an exercise for you. Nobody wants to watch that online. They can't participate in a way. So they feel like they're second class citizen in that space. I think that's not allowed anymore in the virtual space. I think virtual attendees expect more. They expect things to be curated to them. That's what
Hmm.
I've learned.
Yeah. And I'm wondering how that happens. Not to get into the weeds too much,
Yeah,
but I mean,
no,
how do you edit that in a way that would make sense if you're saying everyone who likes red jelly beans move to this side of the room?
I think you don't. I think you edit it
Yeah.
out altogether and you start with the first
Right.
speaker. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's what I mean by it's not enough time to just hit record and have them participate in a live way. If you do have an event, I mean if you do have an activity, then you have to make sure there's a downloadable available for the virtual audience so that they can engage and feel like they're a meaningful part. I keep saying the word meaningful, but I think that is what it is. That they feel like they're an integral part of what's going on and that you created this for them and not just to make an extra $39 because it's a cheap way to sell a digital ticket. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. What are you seeing now with women over 40 with an entrepreneurial spirit, whether they are creating something just quietly that people don't know about and you're trying to help them? Or I guess really what I'm asking is, are we seeing more women over 40 making their voices more heard? Or or is it, I don't know why I'm struggling with this question so much. It's like, okay, I got it. On the one side, I feel like midlife women, women over 40 are hotter than ever, like very, very visibly forward. And that could just be because I'm swimming in that ocean and that's what I see. And is that actually true? And then on the other side, I feel sometimes that it's happening even a lot more than we even think or know or see because we're just doing it more quietly. Like I know women here in Boulder that like it, for me, like they could be the headliner of the biggest conference in the world. Like, oh my God, your voice needs to be heard. No desire. Like, nope. I'd rather sit here with my circle of 12 women and just create a ripple effect. And it's so interesting to see the differences. And maybe it's kind of pointing to what you were talking about, the differences, like why people love conferences in person and why and some people are like, nope, I'm good at home in front of my computer. That's kind of a very circular roundabout question, but I'm just curious about what you see in that space and in your past too, like working with entrepreneurial women. And especially as we're getting older, like where is that visibility?
This is a really interesting question, and we don't have time to fact check it because I'm just going to give you my 2 cents. But let me unpack that question a little bit with you, and I can share what I know and what I've seen. Um, I would say in general, when I was doing consulting, I had millennial clients. I actually have a lot of millennial clients. I think what they wanted was somebody who had been there and done that, and I think that was the appeal. And I was um, accessible to them. I didn't feel so far away. My age didn't create such a gap. I think they were like, okay, I think she sort of gets it. I'll go with her. For the clients that I had that were over 40, and maybe for women in general, I would say there is not the same drive. That is not to say there is not a drive. I'm very driven to see Liberty Road explode and to really have impact. And when I say impact, I mean, I'm not here to change just one life. Like when I hear women say that, I'm like, why? Why do you keep saying if I only changed one person's life? You can change one person's life in a conversation. If you're building a business, you change lots of people's lives, right? Let's go for it. So I think there's something embedded in who we are that we take a more subtle or quiet approach. And this is all socialization. It's not in our DNA, it's socialization. So I don't say it to say, well, if you're a woman, it's like that's all you really want. No. Okay, so that's one piece of it. But the other piece of it is I think that same socialization has kept our ego in check in an unhealthy way. So any sense of ego should be pushed down. I said what I just said to you about I don't want to just impact one person. I want to impact a lot of people because at 55, I can claim that, I can own that, I can say that and not worry that your listener is going to be like, well, she is really full of herself. I am 100% filled with Neda and the life that Neda's lived and the experiences that she has had and the people who've impacted and shaped her and formed her. And we should all be 100% filled with ourselves. Like, let's all be full of it. Let's all be full of her. And I would also say, I don't want to just impact lots of people. I want to make money. I want to I want my work to be valued um, and monetized in a way that validates how hard me and the team are working. I want to share that wealth with the team. I want my kids to benefit from that. Does that make me greedy? No, because I have made very little money for many, 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 many years and have been driven by I'm building something, I'm working very limited hours because I'm focusing here, I'm focusing there, I'm prioritizing other things. Why shouldn't I claim all of that now? Why shouldn't I step into that now? There's no reason. Will I get it? I don't know. Does it matter? No, I'm here for the journey as much as the outcome. Um, so I think that that kind of ego, like anything that feels like I want to get too big, feels like we should tamp it down. So that's kind of that first part of your question, like how is our socialization keeping us quiet? Now I'm going to swing to the other side. When you talk to a woman who's, I would say not just 40 plus, but I would say even more stepping into her, it depends on where you live. Maybe you started having children earlier. So this is more when you feel like that midlife thing feels like your identity. It's that. So if it's for you 40, for me, I didn't feel like I was in midlife until maybe 53. I was much older, right? Um, and it was circumstances around my children growing up and my age and what ached and all the, perimenopause, all of that. So what's also cool about women not feeling the need to be big is because they are full of themselves and they don't need anybody else to appreciate them or to value them to feel like they've arrived or that they can have or that they've had an impact. Impacting 12 women can be enough. So I think that we know ourselves in a way, we appreciate ourselves in a way, we value life in a way, we know what's important and what's kind of, you know what, this is not really important. We just know enough, or we know more, and there's a lot more to know. The 70-year-old woman is looking at us saying, "Oh, you spring chickens, you think you know so much." So I'm aware of that too. So I don't answer your question, but I bring those two sort of opposite sides of why we don't need to be big, and why we don't need to have an impact that has reach. I think it's both for unhealthy and really healthy reasons.
So good. One of the things that just really landed for me was at this time of life, I'm 53, and it's just been in the past year or two that I've kind of felt this midlife settling because of physical things, things that hurt, menopause, all of that, and the age of my children, and just and for me, a sense of wanting something different. Like, okay, I've done that. Now what? Now what? Okay, this is it. Now what? And one of the things that really caught my attention as you were just speaking was no longer really having the need for external validation. This sense of like, no, no, I can fill myself up. I am full. And I love that term. I am full of myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I am full of myself. And at once having these two sides, and that's something that I've personally, I'll say, struggled with during, you know, different times of life, of feeling pulled in two opposite directions at once. Nope, I'm going to be sitting on a hill alone, meditating and picking flowers under the tree like Ferdinand the Bull.
Yeah.
Or no, no, no. I want to be on stage in front of 50,000 people and change more than one life. I want to change many, 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 many. And feeling that pull and like, right. And as I've gotten older and settling into this midlife threshold, is it's okay to be both. It's okay to have all of those parts. It is okay to have all of those pieces. And I can lean into one or the other whenever it feels the best to do so. And not having to make that choice all the time and just sitting back and saying, yeah, I'll have it all. I can be all of those things, or I can be none of those things, and not have it make me feel crazy. Because there were
Yeah. And
times
it
that it
can
would
be
make me feel
crazy
crazy.
making. Yeah. It
Yeah.
can be crazy making. How can I want all those things? It can be dependent on the day. If you
Hmm.
are, for some of us, perimenopause can be a real heck of a time when it comes to our hormonal swings and what we want and what we long for and what we don't and what we mourn. And it's hard to separate, like, what's a moment that I'm having and what's reality. But I love what you said about we can be both. And I think really in the duality of most things is I think where the truth sort of lies. Both things being true is often, even outside of ourselves and in midlife, I think it's often the case where we find things that are really true. I don't know if I can say absolutely true, but they're pretty darn true.
There is truth there somewhere floating
Yes.
around. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
What is most exciting to you right now? Could be personally, could be professionally,
Yeah.
anywhere in your life as you or in the world. What's most exciting right now?
So it's exciting and it's nerve wracking. I'll tell you. I have never raised money, and I've been with business and come alongside businesses as they've tried to raise money. So I was somewhat very loosely familiar with some terms, but as a consultant, my role was really to ready their platform for investors to come and see them. But I wasn't in any way a part of the fundraise, or the details of putting that together. Um, I knew that it's probably a bad habit, but in my career, I've been a very I can do it bootstrappy kind of mentality. And I think that has served me well. I'm incredibly resourceful, but I think it's also limited me. I know it's limited me. And so when I thought about launching Liberty Road, and just to be clear, our hope is to be, the podcast is where we started, but it is to have live events, and it is to have a digital offering. I'll leave it at that. I'm working through that right now. But what I did know is that I needed to bring people around that could scaffold and support all of my gaps. And I have lots of gaps. I'm good at a few things, I'm not good at a lot of things. And in order to do that and bring the best team together, I needed to go raise money in order to put some utilize some technologies that I would want to see in our digital space. Going back to our earlier conversation, like, how do you create something digitally? Oh, I've got to edit this content. I've got to, create it so that it's meaningful for the virtual audience. That takes money. So all of a sudden, I had to get really smart about what does it mean to raise seed capital? Where do you go? What are the terms? What's a cap table? What's a convertible note versus a safe note or a safe document? How do you incorporate these things into your day when you're also running the business? You can't just abandon everything. How much should you raise? Like, what's the cost of money? Money has a cost. All those things I've become acquainted with. And I'm doing a very small seed raise. Like, it's way under $1 million. It's just enough to kind of get me going. And in having to raise money and having, I keep saying to my husband, I just got my MBA last week. I jokingly say, I didn't really, I jokingly say, I just got my MBA in all of the
Uh-huh.
homework that I've had to do and the research that I had to do. But also over and over and over articulating who we are, who we're going to be, what we're doing, really defining the vision so that it's not swimming in my own head, but so I can share it with other members of this very small team that I have, made up of all contracted people who give me 2, 3, 5 hours a week. Um, how do I communicate that? How do I communicate that to a potential investor? How do I communicate that to the attorney so she can help me create the contract? How do I find an attorney? Um, that has been the most exciting thing because it's so cool to still be growing so much at this age, right? To not I don't know everything. In fact, you become very aware that you know very little. Meanwhile, my 20 and 18-year-old are like, we got this. I'm like, okay, okay, sure. So that is the most exciting thing. There's so much for me to learn. And what's really exciting is that that's the message that I want to give. I'm living the message that I want to give. There is so much for you to give. You think you peaked earlier. You actually have the most to offer right now. You have the most resources, you have the most time, you have many of us, not all of us. You have the most knowledge, you have contacts, I would say a Rolodex, but no one knows what that is anymore. You just have so much, right? Um, why wouldn't you be starting something new? And I recognize not everybody wants to. And so I'm not talking to her, right? I'm talking to those that, you said, what's next? And that's kind of our internal mantra. What's now and what's next? That's what we're here to do. Help you assess what's now. What am I going through? What do I want? What do I not want? And then how do I get there? How do I get to that what's next? How do I define that? How do I help me to achieve that and to actualize, it's one thing to say live your best life. It's another thing to walk somebody along that journey and help them uncover that for themselves.
I love that. The concept of peak now. Like, some people might think, oh, I peaked in high school or college was the best time of my life or this was the best time. And when I'm asked that question, or even my husband was just asked that question the other day, it's like, no, no, I'm peaking now. And then I don't want this to be my peak. I want my peak to be at whatever endpoint could be, and that growth is continuously happening all the time, staying curious about life and what else is there and what else can I create. And it doesn't matter how old I am. Like, I absolutely love and am so like clapping my hands in support of you, like, go
Oh,
raise some money.
thanks,
Yes,
Angie.
like
Thank
learn
you.
that and go do it and then tell
Yeah.
me how.
Yes. Yes.
You know,
For sure.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's true. I mean, and to be undertaking that, and I love, like, just got my MBA last week. I thought you were
Yeah.
serious, and I'm like, "Oh
I
my
know.
god,
I
you
could
did that
tell you're
too?
like, yay. I
What?"
was like, no, I didn't really. I didn't
Like,
really. Yeah.
girl, you are juggling a lot.
No, no,
But
no, no, no. No.
but it's fantastic, and I love that, to look around and see women who are being that demonstration of this is possible in whatever form it looks like for everyone else, right? You're doing it your way, I'm doing it my way, someone else might be doing it a completely different way. But that we have these stories out there, and that we have people to see and to hear and to look at and go, oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait, I can do that. Oh, wait, yes, that's possible. Because we do have, a lot of the times, not all the time, we do have more time right now. Like, I have a friend that, she has one in college, one in high school, and she's doing a lot of freelance work. And she's been toying with the idea of getting back into corporate, let's say, or like getting a job with a company. And she's feeling resistance in herself, and then also resistance out there. She feels because of her age. And she's 53, she's my age. And she's like, this is such a strange feeling. It's so weird. I don't know what to do with this. And yeah, I mean, again, I love to see women that are up to things in whatever shape, size, form they come in, and who are unapologetic of wanting to make money too.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't
Like,
know
no, I want
why.
to make
Yeah.
money. I had someone ask me when I first started this podcast, well, are you gonna have sponsors? Are you gonna do ads? And I'm like, yeah, as soon as I can. Like, of course, why not? Because I mean, that's not the reason I'm doing it at all. And if that were to come down the line, and if it were to make sense, and if it were in complete alignment for me, I will entertain it. Like, it doesn't seem to me like I would be selling out of anything. It's just, and I know there's a lot of different ways to make money in these digital worlds, but but I, and it, it didn't even occur to me that I wouldn't, if that is in alignment, if it ever comes around, and because this is a business. All of what we're up to is a business, and businesses can only be in business to make, if they're making money.
Well, you can only continue to show up in your capacity if you are supported. It's not just supported financially. The support financially actually it tells you people want you to stick around. Like, it there's something validating about it. And I don't mean the validation we talked about earlier with the ego. I mean the, like, okay, what I'm doing here resonates with people and I can continue. And they're willing to pay for whoever they is, a sponsor, the listener, whatever. I also think that, we talked about duality of things. Like, it can be that you want to make money and you are a mission driven business. Like, those things can both be the case. And I think we need to stop separating them. We don't have to look to corporate America and we don't expect them to do things out of the kindness of their own heart. We as women, I think, that's a narrative that we can start to infuse in business. We can start to say both of these things can coexist. We don't need to be suspicious of them. And we actually, that is in our DNA. I think that is built in who we are, that we can see those two things coexisting together. And more women need to do that so they can be, you need to be an example. You, Angie, need to be an example to your community and the 50,000 that are going to see you when you're on stage. Say those two things can coexist. So I often say that it is our duty to show up as who we are, um, because when we take all the experience, all the things we've learned, whatever our own journey is, and we can share that with other people, um, our life is like been fully utilized. Like it's we are. I believe we are here to share things and be in community with one another. And I don't care if that's one person that you go on a walk with. This is not a business thing. This is just how I think. And so if we can take those notions and those ideas of, wait, these things can coexist, I believe that, and then show people that it can go coexist, teach people how it can coexist, then the kind of everything that we are gets shared with the world. And I think that's as it ought to be.
Absolutely. And that it I also think about the concept of eldership as you were speaking that too. Like this is the time to turn around and start to teach. Like this is the time when we do have, even though we're still learning and still evolving and still growing, this is also the time that we can start to share some of that wisdom. And it could be on a walk with someone, it could be just listening. Sometimes the best thing to do is just sit and listen and not try to fix or make someone conform. Or it could be in a bigger level of sharing our wisdom, sharing our experience. And it doesn't have to come through a certification or a degree or anything else. Life experience, the lived experience of another human being is what has had, I know, the most transformation for me
Yeah, of
is
course.
just being with another human and their life experience and
Yeah.
what they've shared.
Yeah, sitting with other people. You I wanted to say something on your, I think, brilliant, peaking now and then you moving into the woods. And it's interesting if you literally think of a peak and you think of, in your 20s, you're sort of, maybe adolescence, you're running through the woods, and then in the 20s you're starting to hike up that trail. And there's something really cool about, as you move up and stop and look, you have a vantage point that you didn't have 10 years earlier. And part of part of this idea of peaking now, it's not amassing more. It's not being settled and grateful for what you have. I think it's this idea of a different vantage point, like climbing higher, seeing even more, the fullness of all that you've, all that is in front of you, all that you have to see. And yet there's more to go, and there's a different vantage point there. And it can get a little lonely. Like you get beyond timberline and it's like, whoa, this is really different up here. And there's something really beautiful about what you said. You should run with that. I love your peaking now thing. It's really
Mm,
cool.
yeah, and it is not lost on me
Yeah.
that I have moved to the mountains. The wildlife is different, the perspective is different, what you hear is different, being closer to nature is different. And as you were just as what you were saying about the peaking now, it isn't about amassing more. You're right. It's not about gathering more things, even knowledge. And I am a like I love learning things from people and podcasts and books and all the things. So that can be there, but it's more about this climb, as you were speaking, to get to the place of where you have more of a 360-degree view, right? You kind of start to be able to see more around you, not only behind you, but what's been, and then what's present laterally, and then possibly what's to come. And so having that 360 perspective, or at least playing with that 360 perspective, is something that is really, um, you just kind of brought that into my view. I really appreciate that. Like you just sort of sparked that for me. So yeah, I love that. That landed deeply.
There's a person that I think you'll appreciate if you don't know him already. The I think it's his latest book, but it's been around. Strength to Strength, Arthur Brooks. Do you know that? He's a Harvard professor, and he talks
Mm-hmm.
about fluid knowledge versus crystallized knowledge. In the early years, you're getting information, it's intake, it's data, and then somewhere around your 40s it starts to become crystallized knowledge. Street term for it is wisdom. I mean, that's what I would call it. um, and he talks a lot about, biologically speaking, I don't know if he talks about it in the book or I saw this in like a YouTube video he did, but that we as mammals like are made to in that crystallized intelligence actually teach it. We're made to give that information back. And he said something like whales, they've found out, I think giraffes and one other mammal are the only ones that have that. um, it's fascinating. So if you know that, that's an interesting way to approach whatever work you do. Like, okay, part of this should be passing information along, in some capacity. Anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I was listening to him on a podcast sometime in the last year. And one of the things that stuck with me about what you're talking about was he was talking about the brain, the structure of the
Hmm.
brain, and how once we get into our 40s, they literally don't work in the same way.
Yeah.
Not that one's better or worse, but it's you problem solve differently. You
Yes.
integrate things differently. So this is the good time because we can stop and get frustrated with ourselves sometimes, like, wait a minute, the things I was doing, the way I was learning before, it's just not working. And I'm trying to participate and contribute the same way that I was, and it just doesn't seem to be working. When if we shift that to work more with our brain structure in the, we'll call it this second half or whatever this phase is, to more of a sharing, teaching, wisdom, crystallized aspect,
Yeah.
that it's much more ease. There's much more ease in it.
Yeah.
It
You're stepping
flows
into who you
better.
actually are versus fighting
Exactly.
against. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I have to go back and listen to that again, get more clear on it. But oh, Netta, thank you so much.
No, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me on, Angie.
This has been a lovely, lovely conversation. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to put in the show notes, of course, all the things Liberty
Thank you.
Road,
Thank
and
you.
people, audience listening, definitely go follow her on Instagram and follow Liberty Road on Instagram and go to the website. What's the next step? Like, where's the next place that Liberty Road is going? If you're able and willing to
Yeah.
share, like what's on the horizon?
Yeah. I think I hinted to it earlier, but it's that we will have live programming. I hesitate to say a conference, because part of my mission is to make whatever that is an unconference. Again, internally, I always say when we're kind of talking to the team, most of the women who are going to come to our conference could be on stage, could be on a panel, have something to share. So let's not put her in a seat facing, a dais with three or four people or one person at a podium when half of what's going to come from that person they already know. Let's create a different environment where she can engage with other people and she can have as many aha moments as she can give. Let's create an environment where that can exist, a live opportunity. So events, that's coming soon, this fall. That's what we're gearing towards. And then the flip side is to create a, we say that Liberty is here to help you consider your possibilities, to inspire and equip. So we can inspire through our podcast. There's going to be a lot more content written on the website. The website to date has really been to archive the podcast. You're going to see, we've just brought on an editor, and so you're going to see a lot more kind of deeper, more involved content populating there. And we'll have some fun things too. We'll have like some top 10 things and some shopping things. So you'll see more content on the website. And then this kind of idea of equipping you, like, and we want to do that in a digital forum so we can give a lot of women access to how do you assess what's now and be intentional about what's next.
Definitely.
So that's
And
what's
is
coming.
this just for entrepreneurial women,
No,
or I'm
thank you
imagining
for
it's
asking
not?
that.
Is
No.
this right? Because I want people to be clear. Like this is not for you if you're just running a business or starting a business. This is
Yeah.
for everyone.
So on the podcast, because that's where I started in the podcast was telling these entrepreneurial stories. When we shifted to Liberty Road, I started to bring on experts that were talking about midlife. It could be menopause. It could be, I mean, I had somebody on talking about plastic surgery. I've had all sorts of people coming in to talk about the things we're considering in midlife. But those stories are really to help ignite something in you. They're to help you say yes to what's next for you as much as to say no. And then to think about, okay, well, if it's not that, then maybe it's something else. So you'll start to see more and more of our content and more programming widening the circle. We still think that she has an entrepreneurial spirit. We still think that this woman wants to create something, wants to start something, wants to launch something. But as I said earlier, it could be that she wants to write that book that she's had a burning desire to. It could be that she wants to start a nonprofit or raise money for a nonprofit that she's been a part of. It could be that she wants to spend time doing board work, doing something that's meaningful. So we want to bring more of those examples to the table, and widening our circle and our content will allow us to do that. But thank you so much for asking that. And that's a tricky transition when people have known you for so long, for one thing, like how you expand that circle, but still have as a brand a true north, and convey that true north to other people. Yeah.
Mm, beautiful. Beautiful. Well, I can't wait to see what's next. Sign me up for the unconference
You got
and
it. You got it. Coming to a
whatever else
city
you're
near
getting
you.
to. I love it. I love it. Well, again, thank you so much. And just tell us the website and I will link everything in the show notes.
It's www.liberty-road.com.
Great. Well, thank you again. And I really hope I see you again soon.
You absolutely will. Thanks, Angie. Take care.
Hi, it's me again. Did you know I have a newsletter? Well, I do. Just go to angiebyrd.com/subscribe to sign up for my weekly love notes and stay up to date on the podcast and any other offerings from me to you. And as always, please subscribe to the podcast and leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to your shows. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you also want to see these conversations. Share with your friends and follow me, Angie.Byrd, on Instagram. This will help the show gain momentum and other women out there who are looking to bring some magic and mayhem into their lives as well.